So we know that in paragraphs 5 and 6, what Freeland is doing is giving examples to counter the opposite view. The idea being that in paragraphs 3 and 4, we get Freeland gives examples that show like she's addressing the other side. So she's giving examples that demonstrate opposite side slash opinion. The idea being that maybe we're seeing these instances where, what someone would hold up as an example where we have these corporate companies being good, maybe in a certain way. So what we have here are these examples that counter this view, or the explanation. So it gives examples. I'm going to write examples and explanations to counter opposite views. So we're making our points. We're kind of going through and writing the notes that we need to. So that's kind of the purpose. So that's what they do here. So let's look at some of the details of these paragraphs so we can understand what the summary is, how we would summarize what's happening in these paragraphs. So the first sentence in paragraph 5, but the Gulf oil spill and the financial crisis have taught us rather brutally that the heart of the relationship between business and society doesn't lie with the charitable deeds that companies do in their off hours, but whether they are doing their day jobs in ways that help or hurt the rest of us. So the idea being, the Gulf oil spill and the financial crisis. So we've got that. Those were referenced earlier in the article. So what we're looking at is thinking about and saying that the heart of the relationship between business and society. So what's really important in the if we examine how healthy, how well business and society are acting with each other, the corporate world and the rest of the world are working, is doesn't lie with the charitable deeds that companies do in their off hours. So that means that it's not determined by the advertisements or the maybe the donations or the volunteering or something that they do that are extras, but whether they are doing their day jobs in ways that help or hurt the rest of us. So what's most important is what Freeland is saying, is that it's not what they do that are extras, it's what is at their core, like the way that they operate and everything. So because then she gives this example of, while BP was winning plaudits for being the first oil company to accept. Actually, I'm going to stop and say make some notes here, because I think that's going to, kind of help a little bit later. So I got this text box, and I'll just, make a quick note here. Oh, it looks like there's a restriction on where I can take it. So let me try this. Where'd that text box go? I want a text box. Okay, give me a moment while I figure out how the stuff works. Because what I want to do is, here we go. Oops. So I want to make a note here that's saying that, the daily company operations are more important than the extra CSR efforts. And the example we get of that is where ExxonMobil, what they were doing while BP had their Beyond Petroleum campaign and was getting praise. We've got the ExxonMobil, where they were unfashionably apologetic about their core mission to produce oil. So they weren't using a CSR policy. They didn't have a campaign or anything like that to try and help their image. And then they were just focused on their business and producing oil, and chastened by the Exxon Valdez disaster. So you may not know about the Exxon Valdez, so let's type that up. Exxon Valdez oil spill. We can look at, we've got history. I just like looking at Wikipedia because you can get like very general information right off the bat. You can kind of see, you know, the shoreline that was impacted, kind of the cause of it. You can see right here it happened in 1989, March 24th. So we can see that, you know, it was this huge oil spill. So it occurred in Alaska. And it sounds like, so yeah, 10.8 million US gallons of crude oil over the next few days. It is considered to be one of the worst human-created environmental disasters. The Valdez spill is second in the US waters after the 2010 Deepwater Horizon spill, so that BP oil spill. In terms of volume released. So we're learning a little bit about this, seeing that Exxon, like even though they were kind of thought of as, you know, maybe not being very good, they were willing to, so they really made their, you know, made it really important for them to have safety. And it looks like I might have lost the text. Did I lose it? No, I didn't lose it. I just put it in a different place. So, sorry, I got distracted because I guess I'd moved the text accidentally. What we're learning from this is this idea that daily company operations are more important than extra CSR efforts. And we see that example with the Exxon Valdez, where what happened to Exxon was that maybe Exxon would be, you know, not no CSR efforts, not special by corporate America standards, because, you know, they're not having a campaign or anything like that. But, however, they're, even if they're not, you know, focusing their efforts on, you know, campaigns or anything, what they are focusing their efforts on is their business, and ultimately they operate in a better way than BP, whose focus, who, you know, even though they have their advertising campaign, they're not doing the good that, you know, Exxon Valdez is by, you know, simply operating in a better company. So, however, you know, like, so Exxon, no CSR efforts, not special by corporate American standards. However, better for the world, because, you know, not us, because spending efforts, oops, hold on, I'm gonna move this down, because spending efforts on good operating methods instead of CSR and ads and stuff like that. So, you know, they end up being like, you know, operating in a way that lets them be a little more, that just, according to Christia Freeland, like kind of lets them be a little more ethical than what, you know, BP was doing. So here we've got the same story played out in Wall Street. So much of the wealth of the gilded early noughties trickled down into the 10,000 women-style, clever, charitable initiatives that my friend Matthew Bishop and Michael Green were inspired to coin a term and describe the phenomenon: philanthrocapitalism. Yet the considerable social good done by those projects pales in comparison to the destruction wreaked by the Madoff Wall Street financial crisis of 2007 to 2008. So what I'm going to do is, you know, talk about, we've got this other example of where, you know, all these corporations causing these problems. So CSR kind of leads to these ways where they so the idea of the same story played out in Wall Street. So much of the wealth of the gilded early noughties trickled down into 10,000 Style Women charitable initiatives. So let's look up gilded so you can kind of see what that means. Gilded. So thinly covered with gold leaf, wealthy and privileged. So the idea that we've got these wealthy and privileged people that in the early noughties, so that means like the early 2000s until 2010, so that they trickle down. So you have this money going into these efforts to help these people, and then we've got Matthew Bishop and Michael Green thinking of philanthrocapitalism, so this idea that you're giving money to charity in a way that's going to end up putting money back in your pocket. So, and I think, we find a really important point. The social considerable good done by those projects pales in comparison with the destruction wreaked by the made on Wall Street financial crisis of 2007 to 2008. So CSR is, it leads to more problems than benefits, because what happens is that maybe a few of these women do get to, get some money from this, but ultimately the society suffers a lot more because the money went into irresponsible business practices that force people out of their homes or something like that. So that's what we've got from paragraph 5 and paragraph 6, these examples and explanations to counter the opposite views. So let's go ahead. That's paragraph 6. And then we've got paragraphs 7 and I think kind of from 7 onwards, what we've got are these additional explanations about how, corporate, what other problems with CSR is. So we'll get to those in just a minute.